Welcome back to the Humble Rising podcast. I am your host, Arivee Vargas, and I am excited to bring to you a short but sweet and impactful episode today. There is that feeling when everything in your life technically checks boxes. So you get the job, or you get the promotion, or you get the salary raise. You maybe, if this is something that you want, you have a family and you have children. Maybe there is financial stability that you always wanted to have that you finally have. But something still feels not right. Something still feels off, or that it's missing. Maybe it could be this quiet restlessness, or sometimes it shows up as just feeling blah or meh. Like, meh, it's great. Yeah, sure, it's great. But you can't explain why it's not truly fulfilling. You're doing all the things. You're grateful. You've worked really hard to get where you are, to have what you have. But contentment, the joy, the fulfillment, the sense of real aliveness, that part feels like it's not really dialed in. So today, what we're going to talk about is why that happens. And it's not because you're doing anything wrong. It's something that's called hedonic adaptation. And hedonic adaptation is the brain's way of normalizing even the really good things that we have in our lives. We get used to them. So the promotion, the salary raise, if you rent a new apartment or you get a new home, your title or your job expands in new ways, or even all those life milestones we were talking about earlier, like maybe having a child or anything like that. These things that we've wanted and we've worked for and achieved, they create a temporary feeling of excitement, achievement. We feel uplifted in that moment. But what happens after that is that we emotionally return back to baseline. So the new thing becomes our baseline. And when we're really busy, it's easy to get stuck on autopilot and not realize that it's happening. So if you've been asking yourself, why don't I feel more fulfilled or content or satisfied, even though I've done everything, quote unquote, right? Maybe you've asked yourself, am I burning out? Am I burned out? Or is this something else? Or what can I do to feel more like myself again? Then this episode is for you, because we're going to walk through the 3 ways to disrupt hedonic adaptation and reconnect with a deeper sense of fulfillment beyond all those external achievements and all those checked boxes that we all like to check sometimes, right? The first is to recognize that maybe you're not necessarily stuck. You might be under-inspired, or things are shifting within you and you're starting to notice that they're shifting. And you're asking yourself, what is this about? Like, what is going on here? What is happening? So sometimes you're not unmotivated or ungrateful. You've just outgrown parts of your current life. You have goals, and the way that you did things worked for you for many years, or maybe for a certain season of your life. I talk about that a lot in Your Time to Rise, in my book, about there are these seasons of your life, and there are these versions of you that exist in that season, but that become outdated in a later, newer, more recent season. So you have goals, and the way that you've done things have served you. Maybe it was 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 1 year ago. But you're different now, and your mindsets, your routines, your conversations, even how you spend your energy and your time may not reflect that shift yet for what matters to you now that didn't matter as much before. The clearest example of this I can give is when you become a parent, things shift completely. where you didn't have to tend to somebody else who completely relies on you for their survival and their thriving. You didn't have that before you had a child in the same way. Maybe if you're caregiving for a parent, you've had that, but it's a little different when it's your own child. So things for you shift. So when I say things, I mean your priorities shift. But it seems like work is still what it is, meaning you've shifted, you've changed, you've had to reprioritize, but work isn't necessarily going to make that easy for you, right? Your work environment may not necessarily bend to what your priorities now are. So you have to shift the way that you're doing things and shift the way that you spend your time and energy each day and each week and each month and each year. And that's going to change over the years as your kids get older. But then you have to start shifting and having your life and how you're actually doing things reflect that shift that's happening. When you're always focused on what needs to get done, life can start to feel efficient, like you're trying to be efficient and check the boxes, not just the milestones that you're trying to achieve, but also check the boxes of your to-do list. You ever have those boxes? You ever create those boxes before every item in your to-do list? And you get such pleasure and joy, because I do, out of putting a check mark in that box. Or my favorite is like crossing the thing off the list, right? You love crossing things off the list. And that feels great, but you always have a gajillion more things on the list. And even when you cross it off, it still feels kind of emotionally flat because you got so many other things to do. You're moving forward and making progress, but you also have no room to feel good about the things that you've done because you have to make room for that. There's no room for you to feel lit up. It's not because something is broken in you or something. Sometimes it's because some inspiration is missing. Sometimes we have to ask ourselves instead, I have all these things that are on my plate, all these things I have to do. I am checking things off. I'm crossing things off the list. And then there are more things on the list. And so it feels like I'm just going through the motions. And though the things are important, it feels like I'm just going through the motions and I don't feel any kind of way about it. So maybe you have to ask yourself, all right, what used to energize me that I don't do anymore, that I want to do more of? Or what am I curious about now that I haven't explored before, that I want to explore? So maybe you choose one small thing this week that feels genuinely interesting to you, that has nothing to do with your to-do list or being quote unquote productive. Maybe it's a conversation. Maybe it's taking a class. It could be an online class. Maybe it's reading a book. Maybe it's, you used to love journaling. You used to love meditating. You used to love taking walks. You used to love going to that boot camp workout. You used to love doing yoga on YouTube. You used to love painting, drawing, playing your guitar. I'm literally naming all the things clients in the past have said that they used to love to do and don't do anymore. And then we get back to it and it's a game changer. These are all things that you can try depending on what's something that you used to love that helped to fill your cup that you've stopped doing that you may want to revisit. Start tracking what makes you feel more full inside, right? Your life can feel full of just stuff and things to do, but not feel really fulfilling to you and feel full energetically and emotionally. So start noticing the pattern of what makes you feel alive and energized, not just more accomplished or productive. And also notice patterns of what's draining you and what can you eliminate and what can you limit. You can limit drainers. Sometimes you cannot eliminate them, but you can limit them and the impact they have on you and how much you internalize them. Because fulfillment doesn't require, like you feeling more fulfilled, you feeling more energized in your life does not require you blowing up your life and tearing everything down that you built. Absolutely not. It's really just about slowly bringing yourself back into your life and becoming the driver again in your life. So you're more proactive and less reactive. You're more intentional, less reactive, right? Okay, the second way to kind of address this hedonic adaptation and step off the hedonic treadmill, as we say, is to redefine what enough means to you. So for many of us, and this is not our fault, this is part of how we've been conditioned and programmed culturally, by society, professionally, in all our professions. We've been playing by a script. We've been following a script. And the script is written by society, culture, the messages that we receive by other people, our peers, even mentors, well-meaning, let's say that they are well-meaning. And, you're not going into it and experiencing it and saying, I'm being programmed right now. It's more subconscious, right? But we've been following a script written by someone or something else. Even a script that is written by your younger self. Because your younger self said, for me, I'll give myself as an example. My younger self, when I started at a big law firm as a lawyer, younger self was like, I'm going to be a partner. I'm going to be a general counsel, because that's what you do when you're a lawyer. That's what you're supposed to do. I had no idea that my life and my career would take all of the pivots that it took, and that the journey would be so different. And if I hadn't paid attention to how the script needed to change and how I needed to write the script and write my own story, I would have probably been a partner in a GC and not thought twice about it, because I hadn't taken the time to really reflect and think about what I wanted and why I wanted it and what I was doing everything for. Why was I working so hard? What is this for? Right? So a lot of us are following the script. And by the way, following the script in many respects brings you a lot of success. It does. And for many of us, I know plenty of people who've looked at that script and who've looked internally and said, you know what? This is part of my script, and I feel content and satisfied in my job that I've worked in for 20, 30 years. Like, I'm still really satisfied. I just want to do some things a little differently to be even more content and to be a little bit healthier. So I want to be clear that just because you relook at the script, it doesn't mean that it is not yours and that you won't want to continue it. You may want to just do it a little differently, but you don't have to rewrite it completely. For a lot of us, though, you do hit certain milestones in that script. You keep proving, you keep going, but sometimes, you hit this point in your career, in your life, where you're wondering, what's next? Like, what's enough for me? Because it doesn't feel like I get to these promotions, I get to the next level, and I'm still feeling like it's not enough. I'm still feeling like I get to this place and it becomes a new starting point. And so I'm going on again, and my finish line keeps pushing and moving forward. And I have to catch up and I have to cross that finish line. But then when you do that, the finish line gets pushed further away. And so you're running to meet that finish line. Because hedonic adaptation, that's what it does. It keeps pushing the finish line further away. Even when you arrive at the goal, you achieve the goal, it doesn't feel like arrival. It's fleeting. It becomes a fleeting feeling of arrival because it feels like that new minimum. People who make partner always tell me that. Lawyers who make partner at firms are like, yes, it's great. And I have to do all of these things now and prove myself as a partner. Again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. There is a level of proving you have to do when you reach a new position and title. I don't know who else is not talking about this, but that's important to call out. When you start a new job, regardless of whether you're a lawyer or not, when you start a new job, there's an element of proving that you are excellent at what you do. Now, usually it doesn't take that long to prove it if you're really good, right? But there is an element of proving, and I think that's okay. That's healthy for you to feel like I want to do a really great job because I take pride in my work and I want to do excellent work. But that's not really what I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about when you do all those things and you reach these milestones and you achieve these goals, you have this fleeting moment of success and feeling like, oh, I made it. Yes, I finally achieved this goal that I worked so hard for and I was so focused on for so long. And then it becomes this new minimum for you, and the cycle repeats itself where you feel like you got to do everything all over again, and you don't feel that great. You don't feel satisfied, even though you're now operating with the thing that you had worked so hard to achieve. If you never pause to really think about, what does success mean to me in my life? How do I have to redefine it sometimes? The way that, works for me. You will keep running towards a new finish line every single time. You will keep adhering to some other definition of success. You don't even realize it's someone else's or society's definition of success, but that's what you're essentially doing subconsciously. Again, you're not totally aware of it all the time. But you're going to keep working towards that version of success, like more. It's always about more. It's never enough. You have to really define for yourself, like, what is enough for me? If I were completely accomplished, what does that look like? And I guarantee you're probably pretty close, right? But reflect on that. Reflect on the questions of, if no one else's view, if no one else's opinion mattered, including your parents, I'm going to say it, including your parents and your family and your mentors, if no one else's opinion mattered, what would enough look like for me in this season of life? And I say in this season of life because your definition of success can adjust over time. My definition of success when I started as a lawyer was really about doing an excellent job, making money to pay my loans and to travel a lot and to just have a good time. And I wasn't thinking about anybody, like children or anything like that, because I didn't have them. They wouldn't come for a long time after I started working at a law firm as a lawyer. But success then was like, oh, partner, like that's what I thought success was, right? Ooh, GC, that's success. And then, 5 years later, that definition had changed. And then 5 years after that, completely changed. And then it kept shifting for me. And now my definition of success is much more rooted in who I am and how I want to live my life and the questions I'm going to ask myself when I die. Like, I really am focused on living my life so that when I ask myself certain questions when I die, I'm going to really love my answers. So I'm trying to live my life in alignment with the answers that I want to have when I pass. So we want to make the definition of success for ourselves, or you can choose, if success feels kind of weird to define for you, fulfillment or contentment. Like, what does that look like? And be specific about what that would look like for you in this season of your life. And we're not talking about, living in Bali, although if that's what you want to do, you go do that, right? But I want us to be grounded and practical, because if that's not practical for you, that's okay. For some people, they want to just get out of here, and that's cool too. But for most of us, that's not a viable option. So how can you define success or fulfillment, if that feels better for you, in terms of language or a term to use? How can you define that in a specific way so you know what it looks like for you? So that you know what enough means for you. So you know that when you're getting close to it, you're like, this is what I had envisioned. Like, I'm pretty close. And when I say specific, I mean, you can't just say more time. I need more time. I need more quote unquote balance. Y'all know how I feel about the word balance, right? Or it's not being so general like that, right? Because more time, what does that even mean? I don't know what that means, right? We have 24 hours in the day. And if you're a parent, your 24 hours is not the same as someone who is not a parent. If you're taking care of a parent, your 24 hours is not the same as someone who is not taking care of a parent, right? So let's be honest about that as well. But specificity means, all right, to feel fulfilled, to feel great about my life, and to feel like this is enough for me, this is what it would look like. It would look like one day a week, I'm doing something only for myself for a few hours. It means I'm off my laptop by 7 p.m. 3 days a week. I mean, I'm being very specific, and that's the point. Maybe for you, it's I want to be off my laptop every single day at 6 p.m. If that's realistic for you, then have at it. But what's important is that you have this definition of success or fulfillment. You know what it looks like. You're specific with it. It's detailed. It encompasses your priorities, your non-negotiables, your core values, what gives you a sense of purpose. And you let that definition, that vision, that anchor, you let that be your filter for all the decisions that you make. You let that decide what your boundaries are. Because boundaries become clearer when your version of enough is clear, right? When you know exactly what success fulfillment would look like for you, your boundaries become easier to set and easier to hold on to and hold firm, right? Now the third, my fingers, the third, it's like my daughter who someone said, how old are you? And she was like, I'm 4. And she held up 3 fingers and she was like, oh, I forgot one. There's another one because she's 4. The third way we can try to disrupt hedonic adaptation and get off that hedonic treadmill is to expand the way you view your identity so that it encompasses who you are beyond the title you hold, the roles you have, and your achievements. You know this because hopefully you've all read the book. You've read Your Time to Rise, my book. The first chapter of Your Time to Rise begins with the identity crisis I experienced after having my first child. So I know deeply and profoundly this need for identity expansion. Hedonic adaptation becomes especially tricky when your identity fuses not just with your achievements, but with your titles, how you define yourself. You're not just someone who achieves. That's step one. You're the lawyer. You're the partner. You're the VP. You're the executive director. You're the managing director. You're the one who always comes through. You're the one who's always available. The titles and the way that you describe yourself and the way you've been described, those titles that describe you start to feel like your entire identity. It can feel that way. But titles are fragile. They can change. They can be taken away or they can evolve. But your core inner self, like who you truly are inside, has to remain whole no matter what your title is and what you're doing and how people describe what you do and how you do it. Because when your identity is too wrapped up in achievement or service, any pause on that, like any slowing down, can feel like a failure for many of us. I can't tell you how many times this comes up when I talk to people who are burnt out and want to take some time, and they just feel like, I thought I was stronger than this. Like, I need to be strong and push through this. Like, this is like the ultimate acknowledgement of failure, that I couldn't do it. And I relate to that so much because that's exactly what I said to myself when I had to take a medical leave from work because I was severely depressed and was burned out. And feeling like a failure was, I had that story running through my head for weeks, and I would say months. It took me months to really acknowledge that it wasn't a failure on my part. It was just part of my journey, and that I didn't have anything actually to push through with. Like, I had nothing left. I wasn't even functioning. Like, I cognitively was not functioning. And to acknowledge that was really, really difficult. But it changed everything for me, because then I could get back into the driver's seat and say, okay, how can I take care of myself now? And I will tell you that part and that time in my life truly, truly changed fundamentally who I was as a person, because I will never again put my well-being last on the list, because I know what it's like when it's last on the list, and I almost nearly died. So I know what it's like for something to feel like failure when you're slowing down because you're so used to going. That's this treadmill that we're on. It's like, you got to keep going. You can't stop. You can't afford to stop, because if you stop your legs, that treadmill's still going. You're going to fall off. Like, something's going to happen. But what I really want to stress and emphasize here is that who you are isn't just what you do. And I have to repeat that, because if you're listening in the car, or you're listening while you're doing laundry, or you're listening while you're doing something else or taking a walk, I need you to hear me when I say this. Who you are, the light you bring the world, who you are isn't just what you do, isn't just what you get paid to do every day. And when you forget that, it's so easy to feel disconnected from yourself, even if other things are working in your favor. So, who are you beyond your title, beyond your job, beyond what you get paid to do? Who are you beyond that? What happens? What happens when you don't deliver at your usual level of performance, which for many of you is damn near perfection, if not perfection, okay? Even though you think it's not, trust me, for other people, it's like your 50% is like someone else's 1,000%. I say that to people all the time. True, because I've seen it. What happens when your external markers of success aren't there? Like, what happens? Right? So ask yourself, who am I when I'm not achieving and not performing and not producing? Who am I becoming? Like, who am I becoming? Who do I want to become in my life? Not what do I want to do. Who do I want to become? And who am I becoming right now? Right? It's not about what you're accomplishing. It's more about what you want to lean more into, what you want to learn more, what you want to deepen, what you want to release or let go of, right? You can also try on some new language. Try to talk to yourself a little differently, right? Our thoughts influence what we do and the results that we get, the outcomes we have, right? So instead of saying, like, I'm someone who always shows up, meaning you're always available 24/7, or you want to give the perception that you are, maybe instead of saying that to yourself and running that narrative and living that narrative, you say to yourself instead, you know what? I'm someone who's learning to show up for myself too. So it's not that you can't show up for others or work the way that you feel like you need to. It's, yeah, and I'm going to show up for myself too. And I'm learning how to do that. So you're understanding the power of yet. You are leaning into and embodying a growth mindset. Carol Dweck's Growth Mindset, great book, still a classic. It's worth reading. And maybe something else you could try is letting your identity have some space, letting your identity breathe a bit. What do I mean? Maybe you try something new. Not because you'll be good at it, because you're not going to be good at something you try for the first time. None of us are. But because it reminds you that you're more than your roles. You are more than what you do every day. You can expand in different ways and explore different parts of you that maybe you haven't done before. So when your identity is not solely tethered to your professional performance or titles, you build a more adaptable, grounded sense of who you are. You create a more expansive emotional landscape, one where your self-worth isn't tied to whether someone calls you partner or VP or senior executive or C-suite leader or applauds your latest win. So if you've been feeling like something's missing, you're doing all the right things, but something doesn't feel fulfilling, or you're not feeling content, you're not feeling truly satisfied, there isn't anything wrong with you. We all go through this, me included. You're not alone. This is not about overhauling your life, though. Like, it's not all or nothing mindset. We talk about this all the time. This is not about overhauling your life and tearing down everything you've built. It's not about that. It's about gently disrupting and interrupting the autopilot that keeps you from feeling like you. And that keeps you from really feeling the way that you want to feel. You don't have to wait for the crisis. You don't have to wait for the wake-up call to reclaim your sense of meaning, how you feel fulfilled, right? You just need to summon the courage, because courage is generated and summoned. It doesn't just come, right? You just need to summon that courage to notice what's no longer working, what could work instead, and then giving yourself, no one's going to give this to you. You must give it to yourself. Giving yourself the permission to want more and to start slowly moving in that direction.